product management to engineering, sales engineering, running solution architects. My 6 years before we merged, and right after the merger, I was leading the Sprint global wireline business. My last job there, some of you are familiar with this industry, was to sell that business to, well, we ended up selling it to Cogent. And after I completed that, I took over this role. And in this role, what this means inside of T-Mobile for Business, so obviously I'm on the B2B side, is I have a team of sales specialists, about 150 of us, who our role is to sell basically everything other than phones and tablets. Okay, so I have specialists who sell fixed wireless networks, which we'll talk about here a little bit today, private, hybrid, 5G, purpose-built networks, the whole SASE SD-WAN suite of products. I have IoT teams. I have teams selling collaboration UC products, and a team of specialists selling security, including our partnership here with Ivanti, which is why we're here today. Okay, so that's what I do. And through the course of my job, I have the opportunity to speak to a lot of CIOs, a lot of IT leaders, a lot of CISOs, and learn a lot about this industry, what's important to them. And I want to share some insights with you today, specifically around focus more on networks. That's what we do. But the network, underpins a lot of what we do in the IT world, and it certainly creates that expanded attack surface that we've been talking a lot about. So I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the trends there. And specifically what I want to talk about is, as connected applications proliferate, which they are, and which is a great thing, right? It's good for us that that's happening because it makes applications more accessible to every one of us. That creates a tremendous opportunity, and an opportunity we're excited about at T-Mobile, but at the same time creates some threats that we have to deal with. We know that. That is the definition of expanding the attack surface, right? And so we need to embrace those opportunities, but at the same time, make sure we are equipped to address the threats that they present. So what I want to talk to you about then in this vein is 3 points that I want to deliver today. Number one, let's talk about this sort of ubiquitous connectivity. What does it look like? And this is the insight I want to share with you in terms of what we're seeing. Where are customers going, right? It's been a wild ride. If you've been in the industry 29 years like I have in the network world, you've seen the network go from the old private line and X25 days to frame relay and ATM and IP and MPLS, and now it's a 5G connected world and broadband and SASE and SD-WAN over the top. I mean, it's ever evolving, right? So I want to talk to you about where we are in that journey today and what are IT leaders today looking at for a network. And we'll talk about the role that 5G plays, because we obviously see that playing a very big role in the evolution of networks and what that means in terms of both this opportunity and threat that we talked about. I will spend the majority of my time there because I think that's the insight I can best provide to you is what does that network journey look like? And what does that then mean as we want to secure those network connections in this hyper-connected world? But I will also talk about the fact that, okay, so we've got this expanded attack surface. What does that mean? What can we do about it? And then lastly, what are some of the tools that are out there, including Ivanti, of course, that we need to think about? And how do I see some of our customers talking about this as well, right? And I think the best thing I could do with you is maybe share some of the best practices I've learned with different customers like yourselves that I talk to on a pretty regular basis. Okay, so let's start with number one here, appreciating this ubiquitous connectivity. And I feel like we have to start here. At the end of the day, what are we in the business of in IT? Is anybody here in the business of delivering network in IT? Network is not what we're in the business of, right? In IT, we're in the business of delivering applications, if you ask me. That's my opinion. And in so many meetings I've had with CIOs and other IT leaders, I think it boils down to that. Now, you could argue there's a lot of other things we do. And of course, there are a lot of other things we do in IT. Network is one of them. Security is another. There's a lot of things we do, addressing work and home. All those things we have to address. But I would argue all those other things are in some ways just a means to an end. Network is a means to an end of delivering applications. Security is a means to an end, securing those applications we deliver and so on, right? So to me, any talk about network and where network is going has to start with applications. That's what we're here for. And of course, all those applications that our customers are running, and by the way, this could be your customers' applications, this could be your own employees' applications, could be your partners, vendors, contractors, whoever it is, whoever we build applications for. All those applications do have one thing in common. Today, they all run on network-connected devices. Anybody running applications that aren't on a network-connected device today? No, we Probably stopped doing that 15, 20 years ago. Maybe there's a few isolated applications running somewhere in isolation for some reason, but if that's your job and you're running applications that are completely isolated from the rest of the world, you probably don't need to be here today because you have a lot fewer issues than all the rest of us do. All these applications run on network connected devices. And the devices I'm talking about here obviously are not just laptops and phones, but anything that can run an application. Like in my world, that's IoT devices. It's a big part of that world, right? We now have the Apple Vision Pro headset that's coming out to sort of raise the bar on what VR can be, right? So you name it, multiple form factors, applications running on network connected devices. And those network connected devices are consuming the content and their data from some kind of cloud-based data store, or possibly running the application out in the cloud in the case of a thin client sitting up on these network connected devices. And those applications are getting their data, as you know, from your data center. Maybe you run your own data center, or maybe you outsource the data center, but run your own servers in somebody else's data center, like at Equinix or a Switch or somewhere. Or maybe you've abstracted that up further and outsourced and said, I'm going to buy compute from the guys you see on the bottom right. And in some cases, of course, the applications are run by a service provider who runs the entire application stack for you, like, Salesforce.com, for example. Whatever the case may be, if I could put on one page the simplified view of what IT does, it would be this. I don't know if anybody feels differently, and there's a lot of other things we do in IT, of course, but this is a simplified view. The very challenge we have, though, is this network connected device getting to the application is never this simple. And in fact, there's a lot of space that sits in between these two. And this is the challenge we face. How do we get these network connected devices to get all this content and this data and run these applications across a myriad of different networks and do it in a secure way? Because these applications sit out on lots of different networks, including ours, including all of the other guys that run networks. By the way, anything I put up here in magenta color is stuff that we do at T-Mobile. If it's not magenta, we don't do it, but I'm presenting you the complete picture of what this looks like. So this is not a T-Mobile story. This is a IT story. So the question is, how do we connect? And what are the trends? And what are we seeing? What does this growth look like? And what is the evolution of network? And I'll present it to you from the lens of how I think our customers see it, our end users, not necessarily through a technology lens, but how do users connect? And I think users generally think of connecting their applications in three different personas, if you will. Number one, how do I connect when I'm mobile? Well, that's the first use case here, this mobile use case. Well, I think we would all agree that's pretty straightforward. We connect mobilely on 4G, 5G networks, right? I think we all do that. We're all doing it. We've probably done it this morning, right? Anybody here who has not looked at their phone yet this morning? Of course we have. And we've probably connected to some kind of business application at some point, even if it's as simple as checking your email. And we've done it mobilely. And you do that with your mobile provider. We at T-Mobile, of course, are one of those providers. Pretty proud of what we do. The mobile edge of our network is pretty well understood. We have a network of 80,000 cell towers supporting 116 million devices hanging off that network. We're pretty good at that part. So we've got that part down, and I think we know how to do that. So, but that's just the first use case, mobile. The second place users think of connecting now, which has been driven home since COVID, is working at home. There's a lot of ways you can connect at home. Anybody here not have internet at home? Of course you do. And, we all are used to working at home now, and we've found a way to make it work. We do that at T-Mobile now, actually. We provide a fixed 5G edge of our network now for connectivity at home and in the office, that I'll talk about in a second. This is actually the fastest growing part of our business. You guys know how many, just curious, how many connections every quarter, how many new internet connections, broadband connections are happening every quarter in this country across consumer and business? New internet connections. 400,000 or 500,000. It's pretty close. About 700,000 every quarter. 700,000. It's been that way for about the last 10 quarters, pretty consistently around 700,000. T-Mobile, for the last 8 quarters in a row, has done between 500 and 550,000 of those 700,000 every quarter, which we're also taking share away from the other guys, which is partly how that works. But we are actually doing more every quarter than the rest of the industry combined. And I'm not talking about fixed wireless here, 700,000. I'm talking about broadband in total. So this is Fios, Verizon Fios, AT&T Uverse, as well as their fixed wireless products, Comcast, Charter, Cox, Altice, all the cable guys combined. We're doing really well in this space. And I think part of that is because 5G, I think, has come of age and it can now be viewed and perform as a broadband replacement, right? So that's the second persona. The third persona, you probably can guess if you're working mobily or home, where's the third place we work? Well, in the workplace, in the office, or wherever that workplace is. So we've expanded our 5G edge to support that as well. Now, today, the primary use case here is using 5G to backhaul Wi-Fi, essentially, right? Everybody use Wi-Fi in your workplace? Probably do, right? That's maybe we'll call it the last mile connectivity inside your office. Not to be confused with last mile in a wireline world, because that's which I grew up in, but that's that last little piece of connectivity, right? So you have some kind of WAN coming in, or now perhaps some kind of fixed 5G coming into your office, and then you distribute that inside your building via Wi-Fi, right? This is how this works. This is growing significantly too, and this is what more and more of our customers are leaning on. In fact, we have customers like Tractor Supply and CVS and Edward Jones and State Farm and on down the list that I could cite that have gone exclusively to fixed 5G access for their connectivity in their facilities, in either their retail stores, their offices, you name it. And they've determined that the reliability of this is every bit of what they had in a wired world. And why is that? What is, what the biggest outage reason is in the wired world, which I came from? I ran that for 6 years. I get it. Yeah. Fiber cuts, last mile fiber cuts, usually in your parking lot, right? And many times you haven't built diversity into your building, unfortunately, because it's expensive. And, you're putting in a new light pole, you're upgrading your lights in the parking lot from the old school sodium yellow lights to nice new LED lights. And as they dig that up, they cut your fiber and you're out, right? So many of our customers who have gone to replace that connectivity with fixed 5G are seeing better reliability, actually, because you take that away. And it's an interesting mindset. I was meeting down in Orlando this week, or last week, actually, with HCA. And we were having a conversation about how many of us who have grown up in this world forever have this mentality that somehow wired has got to be better. And why is that? And it's probably just because we've lived it for so long. Wireless must be shaky. And that's maybe because, we lived in the early days of 2G and 3G where it wasn't reliable. And we were talking about how so many kids today, he was talking about a kid that he just hired into his group. I say kid, but he was probably like 30. And the kid was saying to him that he's like, hey, are you sure you want to wire this facility up? Isn't that less reliable because somebody could trip or break a wire? And he said for the first time, he realized, it's been a generational change of embracing the wireless world in a way that many of us who have been around forever haven't, right? And thinking about it differently, right? We were talking about, just interestingly, I'm a EV fan. I have a Tesla, and we were talking about how it's the same mentality we have as we transition from gas to EV, right? Imagine if we've been driving electric vehicles all our lives and somebody finally introduced an internal combustion engine and said, now you're going to drive down the road with a car carrying 20 gallons of combustible gasoline that could blow up. People would freak out about it. But instead, we're freaking out the other way, that somehow electricity is bad. It's because it's a change. It's just different, right? And I think we're seeing that with 5G. So customers, though, are embracing this. This is happening. We're adding 500,000 connections every quarter. If you haven't done it yet, it's coming. We need to think about it. Your customers are going there, and we need to embrace 5G as a means of last mile connectivity. But this is connectivity to still connect Wi-Fi. So this is really still the existing world we live in and keeping Wi-Fi in the building. What is exploding right now, and a part of my team is delivering this now, is the advent of private 5G networks, purpose-built 5G networks, as we have actually been calling it. It's taking the public 5G network that you're on right now, whether it's T-Mobile or AT&T or Verizon, and creating an instance of that same network connectivity privately for you. All right. So we're talking about private 5G networks as a complement here to Wi-Fi. So what does this mean? Wi-Fi is a great technology. It's been around a long time. And as I said, we can backhaul that Wi-Fi out of the building with 5G now. But what private or purpose-built 5G networks is all about now is replacing that Wi-Fi, at least for certain applications, because the two are going to coexist for a long time, with a private instance of 5G in your facility that is used directly by those end users, bypassing Wi-Fi altogether. Like, how many times when you're at home do you sometimes forget to turn Wi-Fi on and you just use your phone using the 5G connection? Of course, right? Because it works. And we have businesses that can do that too. But in some cases, a business may not have enough 5G coverage inside because, right, all macro 5G coverage today, by definition, sits outside of buildings and shoots into them, and you don't get every nook and cranny of the building covered. We can come in and supplement that coverage with private coverage, meaning it's purpose-built for you. And now 5G becomes that connectivity platform inside the building that can replace Wi-Fi. It has better coverage. There's no gaps in it like there is in Wi-Fi. And it's arguably more reliable. And I would say it's arguably more reliable because we use the same team and the same process of deploying that network in a building that we do for deploying our macro network of 80,000 cell sites for 116 million devices. We're pretty good at what we do. We have done this now for many, many customers. One great example of that is Boston Children's Hospital that has now moved exclusively to using 5G inside their hospital for all their nurses and doctors' applications. They were ready to expand the Epic application to use some new capabilities in it, including all the alerting to the nurses now, but found that with I forget the exact number it was, I want to say it's somewhere around 300, 400 access points they had in each building. They had a lot of little handoffs in between those Wi-Fi access points where they had dead spots, right? And those alerts wouldn't necessarily come through. We've now blanketed all those buildings with 5G, and that's what they are using their devices on. The beauty of this 5G deployment, though, is we can deploy this. Anybody who's offering these kind of 5G private networks, they can be deployed in a lot of different ways to match what you guys want to do with it. So do you want just public 5G coverage in there like we offer in the rest of the network, or do you want a private instance of 5G that only your devices can connect to? Yes. Or do you want a hybrid? That's what this hybrid is, where it's a public network, but your devices get priority, which is what Boston Children's Hospital did. Their devices, nurses get priority inside the hospital, and their traffic routes a different way than all the public traffic. So when their nurse gets on the Epic application, their traffic routes privately out a secure data connection out the back into their data center, whereas anybody else that's in the hospital in that 5G network routes to the internet like they expect. When those nurses, by the way, leave the hospital, their phone now falls back to a consumer persona, and their traffic gets routed like every other consumer does. And there's a lot that we can do in these kind of private deployments. So that's what private networks are all about. We are doing that today for many, many customers. We have about 500 opportunities right now that we're working across the country on these kind of private deployments. This is a big focus of IT shops. We're doing it with our own private licensed spectrum. You can also do it in cellular with public spectrum, which is what I've shown here in the gray box, meaning you can do it yourself or with somebody else. This would use, generally speaking, CBRS, which is the public spectrum equivalent of sort of Wi-Fi public spectrum, right? So it can be done if you choose to do it yourself. And then, of course, lastly, the last piece of this build is overlaying the security, the VPN capabilities, evolving into a zero trust model where you can overlay this no matter what persona you're in with VPNs to create an even stronger layer of network security. What is fascinating about this model, so this is it looks like a lot up on the page right now, doesn't it? But hopefully building it a piece at a time helps. But what's fascinating about this model is we're moving into a new world where for the first time ever in a network, you could have what we're calling a flat architecture, the same network technology, same protocol, no matter where you are, whether you're mobile, home, or in the office, a cellular architecture, which we don't have today, right? How many different networks do you guys think you've each connected to in the last couple of days since you left home to come here? Yeah. Right? You were at home on your home network. You were in maybe an Uber on a mobile network. You went to the airport. You were on a plane. You came here. And when you go visit a customer, you have a hotel, and then maybe you connect to the customer's guest Wi-Fi. I mean, when you go on a business trip, you might hit 5 or 6 different networks, as well as different network technologies between Wi-Fi as well as cellular, right? That is an IT challenge. We have done a lot of hard work to overcome that through the years. That's why VPNs exist, right? to create an overlay and sort of make this disparate mess of networks work for us. Moving to a single network architecture simplifies a lot. You now have a single network you can run on. There's things we can do on our network to control quality of service and connectivity, do prioritization of users, do time of day routing, time of day quality, right? What if you want your sales force, your sales teams to have one set of priorities in this network they connect to, but your customer service reps to have something different? In the case of Boston Children's, what if you want your nurses to have a priority in the hospital that's different than they have at home? But then what if you want those nurses to have a little higher priority on their network connectivity when they're at home and happen to be on call so that they never miss an alert when they're on call? You can do so much when you're on a single network architecture. And that is really what I think the promise of 5G unlocks for us as an industry that is coming, and what our customers are most fascinated about. So this to us is the landscape of network that is coming. It is here. Customers are exploring it, and we need to understand all this because it is going to create some threats, as I'll talk about here in a second. So my first takeaway from this presentation would be this. When you think of these three personas of being mobile, being at home, being at work, yes, it creates new opportunities, which is ubiquitous connectivity, and that is great, but certainly it is going to create some new threats that we'll talk about now. But let's, number one, make sure we understand what this landscape looks like and where it's headed. Okay? So let's go back to this for just 1 second. I mentioned, of course, this creates an expanded attack surface, right? And what does this mean now? I mean, we all, look, I'm probably speaking to an audience here that knows this as well as me. You guys know where the threats lie on this page, whether it sits here in PCs that are vulnerable or mobile phones that are vulnerable. It doesn't matter. Your home office is vulnerable when your users work at home. Every element on this page creates a vulnerability, right? And I think the number of vulnerabilities that exist is growing almost exponentially. So how do we keep up with this? How do we assess these vulnerabilities? We heard a little from Sri this morning on this. You talked about your new product launch coming. Look, there are ways you can do it right now and today, though. And in fact, one of the things that we do at T-Mobile in partnership with Ivanti is we create for you, if you would like, a security insights report using the same engine. I believe it uses the same engine, right, Sri? Is the engine of the ASM platform that you guys are launching? Pardon? We have it first, and we have it today. So we have the ability to run this insights report, scan your network, look for all these vulnerabilities in a way that I don't know that could ever be done through brute force. You need a platform to do this. There are other tools out there to do this. So my advice would be, hey, let's find a tool and let's leverage them. Now, we happen to think the one that Ivanti has is a really good one. That's why we've partnered with Ivanti. And by the way, in our partnership with Ivanti, we do it at no cost. This report, at no cost to you as a customer. So it's pretty straightforward what it does. You heard a little bit this morning from Sri on what this capability can do, but not only help you see what bad guys can see, because trust me, if it's out there and can be seen, the bad guys will see it before you do, right? We know that. So leverage this kind of tool to go see what's out there, contextualize it, understand the risk, the profile, what's really important. And then it's up, and then we can go from there. You can go from there in terms of what actions you need to take. But we do this today, and we do it for no cost. So when I'm done here, by the way, and I open up for Q&A in a minute, I'll put a QR code up if you're interested in getting one of those at no cost. The only cost might be somebody might call you. Yes, a salesperson might call you to get your information to make this work. But otherwise, there's no cost for us to do it. And it's a pretty great report. And it really is leveraging the platform that was announced this morning. But it's until the platform launches as an ongoing service, this is a snapshot of what you have, right? So takeaway number 2 here. You got to know your vulnerabilities, right? We can't fix what we're not aware of. And I know you all know that. But as this network grows and becomes more expansive, probably more than ever, we need to embrace these kind of tools that help us find these vulnerabilities. And then lastly, what do we do about this? Well, Sri, I think I was talking to him earlier. I think our minds think alike because my presentation and his are very similar here in terms of how we think about this platform. But I'll share with you how I think about it and through my lens. look, we have a broad and expansive set of threats, and yes, it does require a great defense. Here's how I think about it. First of all, there are a lot of vulnerability areas out there. Is this the end all be all list of those vulnerabilities? No, of course not. It's categories that vulnerabilities can fall in based on the different tools we have to address those vulnerabilities. There's more than this. And I was encouraged for you this morning when you said you had like 36 categories that you whittled down to 8 and then it became 5, because I was trying to understand myself. What are the categories? And I wasn't exactly clear on what they were. So I feel better knowing that it is actually a moving target a little bit. So if mine don't match up to yours exactly, that's okay. And by the way, this was not meant to be a Ivanti slide here. This is just more in general. Here's areas for which we know vulnerabilities can be addressed. But we have to understand all these kinds of vulnerabilities and where where they lie, where the threats lie, right? So let's think about those vulnerabilities, park them for a second here, and let's talk about this next. With the breadth of vulnerabilities we're showing here, what comes next? Next is, what action are we going to take across these vulnerabilities? Well, I talked a little bit already about discovering the vulnerabilities. Sheree talked about that this morning as well in his keynote with the launch of the ASM platform. We can help with the one-time sort of snapshot with the security incident report, but it goes beyond that. Discovering is just step one. You secure those devices, and then you ongoing manage them, service them, et cetera, which we've talked a lot about. To me, I think of this as sort of the depth of our capability. So you got the breadth of vulnerabilities we need to address and the tools to do so. And then how deep are we? Are we best in breed? Are we, how capable are we in the tool sets to address these vulnerabilities? And if we park this over here on the side for a second, the two come together then, in my view, in a platform. So you got the breadth of vulnerability areas that we can address, the depth of action we can take, but then how does all that to come together in a platform that provides you the right visibility to all these tools? And you actually got a great demo. It's really presented of what the new Neuron platform looks like and how it all comes together. And as I talk to customers too, I will just reiterate what Sheree said this morning. It's that constant trade-off of, do I want best in breed point solutions, or do I want an integrated platform? And those really represent the two extremes, right? Because best in breed, you're going to get just what you ask for. A best in breed point solution that goes deeper in actions, it can do more than any other solution in that narrowly focused vulnerability area, but maybe completely disconnected from every other vulnerability area and not communicate. If you go with a completely integrated platform that covers everything, you're probably not going to get the depth of capability you need in certain areas. And frankly, as we look at T-Mobile across this landscape and understanding what I've just put here together, this is too exactly why we landed on the Ivanti Neurons platform, because we felt like it was that right trade-off of best in breed capabilities supplemented by APIs that can pull in other capabilities when it doesn't exist in the platform natively, with an integrated platform, which I thought looked great this morning from what I saw, is really coming together into one platform. And I think this would be, my advice, and what I share with our customers is finding that right trade-off, is first of all, educating ourselves on what this page means around the outside so that we can make the right decision on the platform we want. We just happen to think at T-Mobile that it actually is the Neurons platform. So with that, final takeaway here is we need a broad and extensible platform, same word Sheree used this morning, ironically, to integrate these best in breed capabilities and present it in a common way. So this would be my advice, just to summarize. There is a lot going on in the network space, which creates, to me, the most amount of vulnerability we have, right? So let's make sure we're staying on top and educate ourselves on what's coming. Hopefully I was able to share a little of that with you in what's coming in the network space and what our customers are doing today. And then we find the vulnerabilities, put the right platform in place to go get it. And you'll learn a lot more about that in all the rest of the sessions here today as well.